Iku mau mau, iku lah. Iku mau mau, iku hulu hulu ikala na vau. Iku lah. Iku lah na vau. Iku lah. Iku lah uki, iku lah koi, iku lah mau, mau kai hulu. Kuya. Iku lah. Ikala na vau. Iku lah. Iku lah. Iku lah uki, iku lah koi, iku lah mau, mau kai hulu.
Aloha, aloha nui ka kua pau. Mahalo ke pue o mana, ke pue hau mana o ke tulangu o manoa. No ke alakai ana I ke hanana ke la, ke papahana, Leila, Lelina. And I just want to first start off by thanking the members of MANA student group, Native Hawaiian Student Liberation Organization group at the University of Hawaii Manoa, who helped to really push forward and organize this under the direction of and with the support, of course, and leadership of Walter Riddy and his gang. Many of those who are dealing with many of the same issues in Hawaii. And so MANA was able to really bring a very good, strong, broad spectrum of many interested parties and peoples together to kind of share information about their particular struggles, and more importantly, how we can all work together for a better Hawaii. And so, that really was the main purpose of this particular event. Was to first, for myself personally, I was asked to share and give a so-called state of a state response for the Hawaiian voice, our Hawaiian nation, Alahui Kanaka, especially specifically response to Governor Abercrombie and his recent State of the State address that occurred, I think, about a week ago. And then secondly, was really, as I said, to have all those various voices who are working and struggling, whether it's in the communities, whether it's over housing or the protection of our agricultural lands or the protection of our traditional customary rights, and have all these voices be heard and shared. As we all know, the first step to organizing, to mobilizing and really organizing the people is that we gotta first have the ability and have the desire to sit and listen to one another, because that's the first step. And in this great journey as was shared today, as we head in this destination for a better Hawaii, because in the end, this is what it's really about. It's really about providing a future, a positive future for our children and our grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren that is better than what we have today. And I'm very, very appreciative of all those different voices and some of the strong commentary and information that was provided, and it really helped me to understand, in fact, our people, the Lahui Kanaka, we are a lot more organized, a lot more aware than I think the powers to be, or the representatives in the state government perhaps, or the so-called profiteers or the fat cats who benefit off this particular system that exists in Hawaii today. And I don't think they're aware that we're actually in the know. And with knowledge, as I said, knowledge is power. And so before we can start to exercise power or to challenge the power structure, it's really about gaining knowledge. So that was kind of the first, I guess the kernel that created why this event occurred. And in regards to my specific talk today, in regards to call the State of the State address, I first was to make it known and very clear to understand. If you listen or if you read perhaps Governor Abercrombie's State of the State address 2014, it's very clear that in fact that the Native Hawaiian question, if there's a question, or the Native Hawaiian people or the Lahui Kanaka is absent, is not mentioned in all. In fact, it should be alarming that understanding not just the history of Hawaii, but really understand the plight of the so-called Lahui Kanaka in 2014, that we show up nowhere on the governor's State of the State address. So for me, it kind of provides two reasons for that. The first being, well, Governor Abercrombie was first somehow falsely believed that the Hawaiian question is over. That in fact, dealing with Hawaiian issues is not on the states or state government's agenda. Perhaps he believes this because of particular state of Hawaii initiatives, which includes Kanaiolalo, which is the state of Hawaii's attempt to falsify the manufactured consent of the Hawaiian people to support a process in which the state will drive, supposedly, develop and manage the self-determination of our people. Or maybe perhaps he's looking at issues where they supposedly settled for $200 million of land value in Kaka'ako, 10 parcels, between the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and the state of Hawaii over revenues from 1978 to 2013. Now, obviously, we would realize, as I shared earlier, that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, you know, and they got good people in there. This is not a personal analysis, but if you analyze the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, it's clear, of course, that they are a state agency. They're regulated by the state. The monies that accrue to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is managed, in a sense, by the state and really what they can or cannot have. And so, although there is this assumed manufactured view that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs represents the Hawaiian voice, obviously we will be very clear to understand that's not true at all. And in fact, again, as I said, they're a state agency. In fact, if you look at the trustees, you know, as a system, as analysis, you would realize also that the trustees were not put into place by the Hawaiian people, but the Lahui Kanaka. In fact, the trustees were voted in by the voters at large in the Hawaiian Islands. Now, if you take into account, as I understand it, only about 19% of the voters within the so-called State of Hawaii elections were Native Hawaiians, you can clearly see the vast majority, 4/5 of the votes cast for the trustees came from non-Kanaka. Therefore, it's kind of silly and very, very foolish to somehow believe that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs represents the Hawaiian voice. In fact, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs represents the voice of the majority of non-Hawaiians who actually live in Hawaii, yeah, supposedly on our behalf. Yeah. So, if you understand it fundamentally, you can clearly see it's really ridiculous to somehow buy into that idea that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs would have the legitimate voice to even consider that they should represent us at the table in dealing with the state of Hawaii. Yeah. So, with all of this, I think, you know, Governor Abercrombie, in a kind of arrogant view of what's going on in contemporary history, I think he believes the Hawaiian question is no longer on the table. Yeah. Now, secondly, I also believe one of the reasons you don't have questions about the Native Hawaiian in his State of the State address is also, I think he also has a fear. I think the governor and the State of Hawaii, they have a fear in creating a situation or saying something which would be antagonistic to the Hawaiian community. Because the profiteers and the fat cats who benefit of this particular system as it runs today, the greatest challenge to their domination, yeah, the greatest challenge to what fills their pockets is the Hawaiian voice. Yeah? So if you look at the governor's State of the State again, one of the issues he talked about, for example, was Mauna Kea. And so, you know, the language, in fact, that Governor Abercrombie talked about was that, you know, Mauna Kea, you know, this $1.2 billion project, you know, was Hawaii's gift to the world, in a sense. And of course, the facts remain that how can Governor Abercrombie give to the world something that is not his? Yeah. Something that Hawaiians never gave consent to him to pretend that he can give unto the world. The summit of Mauna Kea is clearly part of our lands, our national lands, the Hawaiian Kingdom, Crown, and Government lands. Yeah, so, which includes nearly 2 million acres of land throughout the Hawaiian Island. And this is not counting Kuleana lands. I'm just talking specific Hawaii Kingdom and Government land. And these lands have been, of course, falsely identified as so-called ceded lands. See, that's the part I want to say also today, and I failed to do that, so I gotta say it now. You know, as was said by many philosophers in the past, the power to define is the power of dominion, meaning whoever defines, yeah, that definition, that imposed definition, really is about dominion, really is about control, right? So even today, when we use language like ceded lands, you see, that is part of the confusion which puts this idea that somehow, first of all, the lands were actually ceded. And if anybody were to study our history, you would realize the Hawaiian people, specifically the Hawaiian Kingdom, never ceded authority over these lands, first of all, to the provisional government, or to the Republic of Hawaii, or to the United States. These were lands which were actually so-called seized or claimed by the provisional government, and then passed on supposedly to the Republic of Hawaii, who then, through the so-called New Lands Resolution, then cedes this land to the United States. And so the question of a title of these lands have always been on the table. But if we enter into this political discussion talking about ceded lands, you see, we already, by allowing them to define those lands, we already are succumbing to their control. You see, that's the point. So how do we reverse the control? Well, first of all, we need to understand a little bit about our history. And once you understand the history, you realize you can never call those lands again ceded lands. So the first thing we need to do as Hawaiians is to restate those lands, reclaim, define dominion of those lands, and say, no, these are our national lands. These are lands that belong to the Hawaiian Kingdom and specifically the Crown. Yeah? And that's the first step. See, that's really the first step. Once we start to talk from one person to the next, to 5, to 10, to 100, to 1,000, to the next generation, you see, we automatically, the so-called claim to these lands is no longer captured under the dominance of ceded lands and under the legality of the so-called state of Hawaii. Yeah? So, for me, fundamentally, I just say, it's from consciousness, from the spoken word, where consciousness begins, where action then follows. Yeah? So, if you see those lands as Hawaiian Kingdom and government lands, there's no way you can sit down at the table and negotiate with the state of Hawaii thinking that in fact the state has any kind of true, authentic ownership of the lands, you see? So fundamentally from the very beginning, you would realize that the state has no title to these lands. And that is a true fact. In fact, I would challenge anybody to show me where in fact the so-called United States received title to those lands, and you won't find anything there. What you'll find, of course, is the New Lands Resolution. And if you read the New Lands Resolution specifically, it's interesting. It says, it doesn't say Hawaiian Kingdom lands. What it says specifically in the New Lands Resolution 1 is that all lands of the Republic of Hawaii is now transferred to the ownership of the United States. Well, of course, now you ask the question, well, what land specifically did the Republic of Hawaii own? Or are we talking about the lands that the Republic of Hawaii just claimed to own? Because if the Republic of Hawaii actually owned those lands, then where is that title of transfer? You see, so the first step for our people is to recognize part of this, you want to say a game that's going on, is we got to first start to reclaim our history. We must start to reclaim our dominion by calling and naming these things for what they actually are. Yeah. Another example of this would be good to understand when you hear language today, and I'm going to use Kanaiolalo for example, and this is something I kind of talked a little bit about, but the Kanaiolalo is a state-sponsored, state-led organizing effort to so-called create a list of names for these so-called ethnic Hawaiians to then move forward to negotiate with the state of Hawaii later down the road for something. Now obviously the first thing for me that when I looked at that particular bill was to look at the question as well, what lands are included in this? And obviously you find out when you look at the Kanaiolalo bill, I think it's Act 195, I'm sorry, is that there are no lands mentioned, not 1 acre. When you look at water, there's no water mentioned. And so you got to put this in the context, and this is why I brought about the $200 million if there's no lands, if there's no water, there is no life. And no life means no air. No air means there's really no future for our people. Now, if you step back to that and not look at what the rhetoric is going around about what perhaps could be passed on to Hawaiians, but let's look at exactly how the state of Hawaii has treated this question in the past. And what you would find, the most recent event, again, would be the $200 million settlement. Yeah, so, in the state of Hawaii's eyes and program, yeah, they see the settlement with our people as being something over money and entitlements as a fiduciary settlement. They've never, you know, well, unless you want to count the so-called 10 parcels of land in Kaka'ako, just 10 small parcels. Now think about this. This is for the use of almost 2 million acres of land. And Hawaiians basically got 10 parcels of our own land, yeah, to develop, but not as OHA sees or wants or desires to develop. In fact, they're still under the authority of the Housing Development Board. So I don't know about, you know, if you want to talk about sovereignty and self-determination there, because it's really the board that's going to decide for OHA what they can or cannot do for these lands. But what it tells you is that in the state's mind, this is their program. The state sees settling the Hawaiian question via paying a percentage of some kind of negotiated revenues. That's the future. That's the future of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, or that's the future of whatever entity that comes out of something like Kanaiolalo. In fact, the word, of course, in a federal level, if you look back, you know, connected to the so-called Akaka Bill, which is basically a federalized version of the Kanaiolalo, in the same way, doesn't address any lands and water. Yeah? But it frames the questions if you look at who can sign up for Kanaiolalo. Yeah? And if you look at the application, so I challenge everybody, take a look at the application. And if you read the opening lines, it basically says, Hawaiians were sovereign over the islands since 1778 or something like that. Indigenous Hawaiians, first of all. So these are particular words that our antennas should go up. First of all, you should understand what those words mean. What does the word indigenous mean in regards to the framework of law? Why 1778? Because truthfully, correct, we as a people did have authority over these lands. But in 1843, our lahui, as part of Keaupuni, Hawaii, the Hawaiian Kingdom, was able to become recognized via proclamations, or what's called the Anglo-Franco Proclamation by France and Great Britain, and also by Thailand in 1842, as a recognized nation state as part of the so-called family of nations. And what is clear, in 1843, we became nationals. As nationals, we gained what's called political status. Yeah, so we went from being just indigenous Hawaiians to an island in some colonial construct to having political status as a nationality. But when you look at Kanaiolalo, you can clearly see there's a reason why they don't put in that they recognize 1770, but why they look away from 1843. And the reason, of course, because if 1843 is acknowledged, they cannot treat us as indigenous to the United States. They cannot look at us as somehow in the framework of the U.S. colonizer over our people. In fact, the opposite would be now true. Yeah? Now they would have to deal with us over the national question and political status. Yeah? Which, if you look under the Akaka Bill and the U.S. federal process, we don't fit. So unlike the American Indians in a lot of ways, except for the so-called 5 civilized tribes and so forth, the Hawaiian identity was not just one as being native peoples of the Hawaiian Islands, but we also had another identity that we were able to gain in recognition via our nation state status as Hawaiian nationals. But see, dealing with Hawaiian nationals is a very different question than dealing with a population of indigenous peoples under the framework of the U.S. Constitution or under the framework of the state of Hawaii. And therefore you have this contradiction. Therefore Kanaiolalo cannot deal with but for me, the embarrassment and the foolishness is to deny that history. How can you supposedly move forward, even mention words like sovereignty and self-determination, and not talk about the true history of these islands? When you look what happened in 1893, it wasn't rounding up a bunch of natives and indigenous peoples put on some reservations like American Indians and put on to be called like a population on the United States. No, what was taken, what was assumed to be taken, I should probably say, was a country. In fact, was a nationality. In fact, was a seizure of the so-called national lands. So to me, this is part of the contradiction that also showcases that Kanaiolalo is not the measure. If it cannot follow true history, that's telling you there's a reason why they're hiding this in the back pockets. And secondly, about Kanaiolalo, one issue I forgot to talk about earlier today, if you were to look at their organizing, Kanaiolalo specifically, and specifically for just Office of Hawaiian Affairs, they received $4 million as of now, $4 million, yeah? And roughly about only 30,000 signatures directly have been gathered via Kanaiolalo, via this $4 million. Now, if you were to divide that, right, using your mathematics, you would come up, of course, with about $133 a name. That's how much the Office of Hawaiian Affairs spent to get each name signed onto this so-called petition. That is an embarrassment. Yeah? And then if you bring in Kauinoa's, that's another so-called $10 million plus that was spent to bring a total near 100,000 supposedly. You're talking, again, that's over $100 per a name. Over $100, listen now, over $100 per name was spent. And what's embarrassing about this so-called nameless, as I call them, you know, the T-shirt nation, as I like to call them, you know, that you had to give away T-shirts to have people sign their name. I don't know about that kind of nation. I don't want to be a part of a nation where somehow, in order to convince someone to sign the name, you know, you offer them a free T-shirt. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not saying this, that people were wrong or however in that process. See, as I was trying to talk about earlier, we all of us, including myself, we are all in a learning process. Yeah? And as I had talked about earlier today, you know, when you're given a dirty glass of water to drink out of that dirty glass, and all you know is to drink out of that dirty glass, you don't even know it's dirty, right? That's all you have. In fact, you get trained to believe that's all you deserve. But when someone shows you a clean glass of water, and you start to recognize for the first time, why am I drinking out of this dirty glass? And you start to recognize there's something better, which is this clean glass. By human nature, you're going to choose the clean over the dirty. Even if the dirty glass is filled with tang or malolo syrup or sugar. Even that's going to be hard to drink because you know it's not good for you. You see, so part of our option here is, this is Kanaiolalo. You know, once you understand you have the opportunity for a clean glass, people automatically, and so all of us here in this process, yeah, once you awaken to the fact and you start to see the shortcomings of Kauinoa and the shortcomings of Kanaiolalo, you cannot help but turn away from that process, because you would realize that that process is one that does not move our people forward. In fact, it's a process that moves our people back. In fact, it's a process that shackles our people more. In fact, it's a process that denies the humanity of our kupuna, yeah? that denies our own history. Yeah? Because if we're ever going to live on into the future for the next, I say, the next 2,000 years, we're going to have to take our place to drive our own car, to live in we would have to put ourselves in the driver's seat. Yeah, we can no longer be the objects of the profiteers. Yeah, we're going to have to be the subjects of our own history to take charge of this particular question. And the only way we get there is from learning and sharing and working together. Yeah. And so that, you know, for me, that's the last message as I spoke today. And if you look at all those who benefit of this system of exploitation of our lands and resources, you know, at our detriment, the only way we will be able to defeat that is to work together, is to unify, to learn and to struggle together to make a better day for all of us in Hawaii. You know, so again, yeah, we're gonna head. Yeah.
I'll play with something bluesy. That's right. Emho kapono no ka aina ike e hau. Emho kapono no ka aina ike e hau. The soul of the people is the blood of the land. born and raised, Kupa Aina, Kupa Aina, Kula Ivi. We were born and raised in Hawaii to respect the native way. Eo ke au ka ni ka piano. Papakahiu, yeah. Laia ke aina kupapakahi. The soul of the people is the blood of the land. Malama lama, malama lama. Ke kule ana, kupa aina, kula ivi. We were born and raised in Hawaii to respect the local ways. Hey, oh, a brother Lau, Kiko Alu now. Ooh, yeah. Ho, kai ka ko hui malama Hawaii. Yeah. Ho kahi ka ko hui malama Hawaii. The soul of the people is the breath of the land. Malama lama, he kule ana, kupa aina, kula ivi. We were born and raised in Hawaii to respect the local ways. Hey, oh, Uncle Stan, you the man, give me some bass. Yeah. Hey, mo, kapono no ka aina ike hau. Yeah. Hey, mo, kapono no ka aina ikeha. The soul of the people is the breath of the land. Born and raised, kupa aina, kupa aina, kula ivi. We were born and raised in Hawaii to respect the native way. We were born and raised in Hawaii to respect the native way. We were born and raised in Hawaii to respect the native way. Ooh.
the music and you cannot handle. And then you wanna shut us up so you start screaming scandal. You say we're fighting for no reason and that we only fail. If intelligence is a crime, then I belong in jail. No more watching the world go by, my friend. Somebody gonna die if I see my tutu cry again. Hawaiian man, Hawaiian land. I rap there for I am, and if you ask me why I rap Hawaiian, then I tell you cause I can. You cannot understand, so you start dissing. The last person that tried to shut me up is still missing. This is the land, so tell me why must we pay rent? If I happen to ignore you, it's because you're ignorant. Pidgin is the dialect that I select when I talk. Ikia oike o little Hawaii, but tell me, can you walk the walk? You say library, I say library. I tell you why I call it the library, cause that's where they bury all the lies you can't believe. Everything you read, the words of our kupuna is all you really need, and then you tell me that I'm arrogant because I call you ignorant. When it's apparent that you're blaming me for your stupidity, when you should blame your parents. Pilgrims, that's the way it is, not prejudice, I'm just telling it like it is. My words upset your belly just like indigestion. To snap or not to snap, that is my question.
Kau. Ai. Kue.